The biggest risk to your retirement is that you retire too early, withdraw too much, and now all of a sudden you're not in a position to have lifetime income. And I am the meanest early retirement advisor. I don't let anyone retire too early. So in today's video, I'm going to go over a real example so that you can understand exactly what mistake to avoid so you can retire early with total confidence. Because the majority of you go, hey, I think I'm in a good spot, but if my investment portfolio takes a turn, does that mean I'm no longer in a good spot? I don't want to have to go back to work and ask my boss for my job back. Or I don't want to have to go, oh my gosh, I'm worrying every single year. Am I spending too much? How does that change? So this example should be very helpful for all of you. I'm making this video because it's a common question I'm asked, which is the majority of my investments are in the US, the S&P 500. Is that good? Is that bad? How should that change? So hopefully this video answers a lot of those questions for you. My name is Taublieb. I'm a certified financial planner, vice president here at Root Financial, and host of the Early Retirement Podcast. Here I am, I'm on the screen. I'm going to make myself a little smaller so you don't have to look at my radio face. So I'm going to go way into the corner up here. So I'm going to explain what we're looking at, but I'm going to start with a real example so that you guys can understand where this comes from. So I have a lot of different things I'll show, and I like to be creative in my meetings. So I'm going to show you a real story of a client that came to me that retired early at 73. You're going, Ari, that doesn't sound so early, 73. And so here's what I mean by that. They retired in 2000. And so what happened is they retired early. They thought they were in a good spot, but before they had come to me, the majority of their assets were in the US. And so as you go down this list here, you can see the performance of different countries. So Colombia at the top, then Czech Republic and Brazil. And this is just looking at any 10-year time period. So you could say, Ari, why are you picking this 10-year time period? I'll tell you why in a second. But you can see the US was actually the fourth worst performer. So what happened to this client, they retired early, but they were spending a sustainable amount, but they got unlucky, meaning the part of the market that wasn't doing well while they were paying for health insurance, while they were traveling, it was going down. And so all of a sudden now they're withdrawing from their portfolio too quickly. Now, I'm not about nitpicking, so I'm going to show you the exact opposite scenario, which is what if you got really lucky and retired in 2010? The US was the second best performer, as you can see here. So I don't want you thinking, oh my gosh, is Ari just picking this 10-year? This client could have retired early with total confidence if they got lucky. Now, I'm not saying other things could have went array, but what you can see here is they're hoping they get the good 10 years. And if you don't, it's not so fun. So it's the same example of I don't want any of you thinking, oh my gosh, if the US doesn't do okay, am I not okay? Or if the US does well, great, I'm going to have way more than I could have imagined. I want to make sure you have the income you need in retirement and that's what you care about. Here's another example to illustrate my point even further. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I showed my client, which is let's assume they retired in 2000 and they wanted to know where would they be today. So all I'm doing really simple is saying here they are retiring in 2000. They started with $2 million and they wanted to withdraw $80,000 a year every single year. Very simple. So they're going to take out $80,000 every year, nothing fancy. And so hypothetical number one is that everything's in the US in the S&P 500. And hypothetical number two is just more of a, very conservative to moderate portfolio where, yep, you've got some US stock market, a little bit of international, a good amount in bonds and some external international bonds. So this is almost like your traditional 60-40 portfolio versus the S&P 500. And you're going, all right, why are you showing me this? Well, watch what happens when we go down here to this graph. You're going, well, this looks a lot different. And it is very different. And so what most people think about is, hey, it kind of just evens out over time, when in reality, that's not what happens. So you can see this client is taking out, they have $2 million, this is what they're starting with. And that's just December 31st, 1999. And here's where we are today. The second portfolio, the one that was in 60% equities instead of 100% equities, it's at about $1.9 million today versus you can see the S&P 500 is about $626,000 today. And so the reason I'm showing you this is both scenarios, there are big drops. It's not me saying those don't occur. It's me saying by having a diverse portfolio, what it allows you to do is not have to take from the investments that are down, which requires you to have to sell things at a loss. So what you want to do in retirement, the name of the game of how you win it, especially in early retirement, is by not losing. You don't need to hit a home run and hope the S&P 500 does well. And if it doesn't, we're not in a good spot. It's all about consistent singles and doubles. And so a lot of you aren't big baseball fans, but the name of the game in retirement retirement is income. I don't need you to try to hit a home run. And a lot of you are unintentionally trying to do this. So what I want you to see on this graph here is that there's still significant ups and downs. There's still times where you're down significantly, but all of a sudden those, gains, you can see they're a whole lot more impactful when they actually go up. And so what I mean by that is that although there are still certainly downturns, you're not avoiding them. What you're doing is you're just simply minimizing the risk, because if markets go down and all you have the S&P 500, you have to go sell that at a loss and take that income to go live. Versus if you have bonds or you have international markets or you have other asset classes like real estate, you can take a portion based on what's done well and what hasn't done well. And that allows you to offset a lot of those losses, which can yield a much greater return in the long term. So you can see in this example here, very different scenarios. And you could run the same exact hypothetical, whether it's $2 million or, you could say you want to take out $100,000 a year and you're starting with $2.5 million. We could run this all day. And this is what we'll do with our clients and say, hey, here's the trade-off. You have $2.5 million. You want to spend $100,000 every year. Scenario one, you have $800,000 and dwindling over, that's his 25-year time horizon. And so this really impacts your legacy goals. If you want to leave $2 million to a certain child, or if you're worried about, am I going to be a burden in future retirement planning? Versus here you are, you don't have the quite $2.5 million, but you have $2.3 million. Now, this is very different if you say, all right, I don't need $100,000. I want to spend $50,000 in retirement. Well, if you want to spend $50,000 in retirement, you can see here that there are oddly instances where, based on the timing here, that you can get fortunate. And so what's happening here, I'm not about nitpicking, is for the large majority in this hypothetical, if you want to spend $50,000, you could see that, the diversified portfolio is going to outperform the majority of the time frame, but sometimes the US is going to do really, really well. And when it does really well and you're participating in that growth, you could outbeat a diversified portfolio. The question is okay, great. Now you have $6.7 million instead of $5.8 million. That's great. You have an additional, $1 million, call it. But what you're doing is you're subjecting yourself to so much risk, where the only difference now is we reanalyze what I showed you. And so now it's, wow, okay, so I could have maybe come out on top if I hit a home run perfectly, versus singles and doubles. And I see I'm never running the risk of running out of money. So hopefully this example is helpful to illustrate the S&P 500 versus a diversified portfolio, especially for an early retirement. You might need this income for 30, 40 plus years. So it's a whole lot more impactful than a traditional retirement. To summarize, you don't want any single investment or asset class to dictate your ability to retire. So investments is just one piece of the puzzle. You need to make sure your taxes are optimized. You need to make sure that you're not leaving anything on the table unnecessarily through electing the wrong pension, or not considering rental income, or understanding when's the optimal time to collect Social Security. So if you're looking for a holistic planning process so that you do not run out of money and that you don't, like my book says here, not my book, one of my favorite books, so you don't get killed on taxes, is that you absolutely make sure you have a partner that's helping you along the way. So we are one of the weird advisors that says everyone doesn't need an advisor. It just depends what stage of life you're in and what experience you're looking for. So if you're 1 to 3 years out from retirement, you have north of $2 million, that's the sweet spot of where we can help people optimize, where financially there's certainly a benefit to working with us. At the same time, there's that non-quantifiable piece, which is the peace of mind knowing you have a plan that makes sure you won't run out of money. So this is, of course, what we love doing. Feel free to apply to work with us if this is of interest. And I love you guys. See you next video.